All right, everybody, today we are talking about root density. This is something that just came up and has been going on, talked about a little bit in GrowCom. And someone has just posted about that they sold another account that really helped their root density. And that sparked my interest in wanting to have a very quick video about root density and its importance. So as you start a lawn and landscape company, or really any service company for that matter, you are going to be hunting and kind of starving for jobs when you start. Honestly, I can tell you, it doesn't matter how big you are. You can sometimes still be starving for work, and you can be what we would consider scratching and clawing to make sure you get what you need to keep that company moving. But so in the beginning, you're going to have less root density. And what does that mean? That means you're going to have stops spread all over because you haven't been established for long. You're getting whatever you can get, and there might be a lot of drive time in between that. And specifically for a reoccurring service like mowing, for example, that density not being close is going to be very hard on profitability, because without density, you spend a lot more time behind a window, and you can't turn any labor hours behind a window. You can only turn labor hours while you're on that property. And unfortunately, you can only charge so much, so you can't always make up for some of that window time. You can only make up for so much, or you'll just be so heavily priced out of the market that you may not get hardly any work at all, which will then make it even harder to close that root density. Let me differentiate between two things. First, reoccurring services and more one-time services. If you just look at a company like ours, lawn and landscape, mowing is where we really need this density, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But on the project side, design and installation, we don't really care about this density as much, because we are able to build in a lot more drive fees, a lot more mobilization fees, a lot more load up, unload, deliver, all of these different aspects. But those are bigger projects that you can tie that into. So when we're talking about root density, we are talking about smaller ticket items, stop by stop, that are pretty limited on how much you can charge. If you look at a map of a town, if it takes 15 minutes to get across the town and you've got a lawn on all four quadrants of that town, now you've got 15 minutes across, almost 15 minutes to the next. You got a 15-minute drive between each. So the goal should be to start filling in that center, or when you specifically start in a smaller area and start really canvassing that area and growing outwards. If you are in a big enough town, this is extremely important. So when I talk about big town, where I first started our business, the town probably had a rough population of 100,000. That is not a big town. So covering that whole town, the drive time's never going to be too crazy. Yeah, you could get up to that 15 minutes, but it kind of grew, like I talked about, in one small area, and then kind of grew that out. But some areas, like if you're in the Dallas area, if you're in these metropolitan areas where it can take forever to get across town, you really have to section that up. You can't just take work from anywhere on a small ticket item job, because you won't be able to make any money. You can't do 2 stops for $50 and drive the other 4, the other 5, the other 6 hours of the day and expect to grow your company. So with root density, the goal is to have as many stops in a location, in a radius as possible. And that should be a really big focus when growing your company, to start in a small localized area that you can manage getting across, and grow that out and grow that out and grow that out and grow that out when it comes to small repeating services. So then each time you sell a lawn, your company's going to become more and more, or whatever that service is, right? And more profitable, because you go from having 6 minutes of drive time to 5 minutes of drive time to 4 minutes of drive time. And before you know it, you've got 2 houses on a couple streets, and then you've got 3 houses and 4 houses on a couple streets. And now your drive time shrinks, all while your company's profitability goes up and up and up and up. How you create root density, that's something that people always ask about. I would be looking around your specific areas, especially if you're starting out and you don't have that density yet. It comes in time, if you're in business for a couple years, 3 years, you're probably already starting to gain some density. Then you can practice these systems even more. But so if you're first trying to gain density, door hangers, stuff where you can specifically drop it right in a localized area on that route of the people where you're doing work around. If I didn't have much work, if I only had 10 lawns to mow, every lawn I would go to, I would do a bunch of door hangers in that neighborhood around each lawn. And then maybe I'd do that block and then a block over the next week. And so I'd keep canvassing out in those areas, so I get more and more lawns in every stop. So I can't emphasize how important this is for you, because this is what's going to make your company profitable on these stop-by-stop jobs. Now, if you do have to take on something out of that range, right? Like if your service area is this 5-mile circle, well, if you do get an offer from something outside of that, and it's outside of that service range as of now, you can still quote it, but then bill in the extra money to get there. So if they accept, which is probably much less likely, then at least you make it up for that drive while still continuously growing that route in that dense circle as you continue to get more dense, then grow the circle, get more dense, then grow the circle. And this is something that it can take a long time. And this also might be you gain density in a couple locations, meaning when I started, we were really busy in the main town, which was Springfield, and then we would also get a lot of work in Chatham area. And so those were kind of far apart from each other, so we kind of separately grew density, right? We'd have a Chatham day, we'd have a Springfield day. They were about 15 minutes apart, grew, and we focused on those areas. And now we've got enough service across the whole town that it really doesn't matter where you're going to be at, because we've got lawns, we've got stuff that we do in every single area of town. And now we're just continuing to grow that outside band of our service further and further and further, because our lawns touch further and further and further out either way. So route density is king. It's going to make your company more and more profitable. Don't focus on selling everywhere. Focus on selling in a strategic area that you are filling out before you step outside of that area. We have the exact same thing going on here in Florida. Everyone wants us to go over the bridge into another town that's huge, not huge, but big, only 10 to 15 minutes away from our office where I'm sitting at right now. But when you do the math, if you were to get the market share here, you could probably easily do $8 to $10 million to $12 million worth of just mowing grass in the town we sit in. And so that's where that thought goes. Look at the available market share. Look at how much work you're doing. How much could you potentially actually with reality get in that area? And if you're nowhere near that, what's the reason to jump outside of that and then try to get this work that's going to be harder and harder and harder to make profitable versus growing this inside area? And that's where I kind of set my goals on, hey, we're not going to jump out of this area and probably until we're north of the $5 to $10 million of mowing grass, because that's what's capable in just this little area we are in now. So think about route density, keep that top of mind. Don't just sell out of being desperate, because sometimes being desperate could cause you to be less profitable and have a much less exciting business. I hope that helps you get that route density going, hand out some door hangers, do some guerrilla marketing, and get serious about growing your business.